Hi everyone, my name's Chris and I'm an alcoholic. We're not gurus, we don't know everything. We've both got over 25 years of sobriety, so we've got some experience in sobriety, but we also remember the suffering of the alcoholic. The workshops are about giving you an overview of the 12 steps. So with that, I'll pass you over to David. There's a lot to get through tonight, and I hope you stick with us, but I hope you enjoy this one.
Okay, hi, my name's David. I'm an alcoholic. This is a really uplifting exercise talking about steps 10 and 11 because we've come a long way through the program. We're talking, of course, about the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And over the last few weeks, we've been looked at the first of those. I remember really early on arriving in AA desperate. I was homeless and I ended up in this halfway house rehab where part of the rules of living there is that you had to go to at least 3 AA meetings a week. And I thought at the time I can put up with that. I wasn't really expecting very much from AA. But I can also remember sitting in an AA meeting and reading the banner of the 12 steps, and none of them seemed very appealing to me. I don't want to admit defeat, and I don't want to believe in something greater than myself, and I don't want to turn my life and will over to that. I certainly don't want to take an inventory or share it with someone else, and I don't want to change. And as to making amends to people, that doesn't sound appealing at all. But the one thing that sort of appealed to me in some way was step 11 and about prayer and meditation. But even that, I had some experience with meditation when I was much younger, when I was in my early 20s. I had a girlfriend whose brother taught meditation, and both of us learnt this meditation technique. And I remember a period of about 8 months in my life where I was meditating every day. And it was a really peaceful time. And I actually think I drank a lot less during that time. But then the relationship broke up with the girlfriend, and that was it. I went back to the drinking. It was all downhill from there. But I had in the back of my mind that meditation is a really powerful thing. And much later on, when I was in lots of trouble with my drinking, I'd stop for a period of time and I'd always go back and try and do some meditation again because I thought I knew how valuable it was. But the meditation on its own wasn't strong enough, wasn't powerful enough to stop me drinking. I didn't realize I needed all the 12 steps. But there was something about the meditation. Wasn't too keen on the prayer side of it because I didn't have an idea of what the higher power was. But certainly the meditation was there. And so I'm glad to talk about this one tonight because meditation is a really big part of my sobriety. So we're going to have a look at the steps and how we get to these steps. And as we do, I'm going to actually point out how prominent and how important prayer is as we go through this. See, I thought I'll do these steps as best I can, but I'm not going to pray because I don't believe in that stuff. But I've discovered along the way that I was being shown how to pray and what to pray for. So I drank for 17 years, and the last 3 of those years I was desperate to try and stop drinking. And I'd failed, multiple detoxes, hospitalizations. In the end, I'd almost given up giving up. And when I came into AA and step 1 talked about being powerless over alcohol, and I read the book Alcoholics Anonymous that describes the 12 steps. That first step came to me because people talked about the 2 aspects of the disease. The first being the physical side of it. The basis of this disease is a physical difference between me and other people. Most people can have a few drinks, but they get to a point where they're able to say, no, thanks, I've had enough. They can control how much they drink and how long they drink. Whereas whenever I started drinking, it tended to go out of control. I'd have that first couple of drinks and I'd get a craving to keep going and keep going. And over time, because it's a progressive disease, that gets worse and causes all sorts of problems in my life. Marriage breakdown, loss of job, affects my health. I have to start lying about it. I'm covering up. I'm letting people down because I'm just drunk a lot of the time, making bad decisions. But then I got to a point where I made this sane decision. Look, a point that most of us come to is that if I can't control it, I better stop. And so I'd stopped drinking, but then I discovered this other part, and this is the second part I identified with when I read the book and I heard people in AA sharing, is this mental obsession. So that even though I would stop for a period of time, life would get better whenever I stopped drinking, but that memory, that urge to do it again would keep on coming back. And eventually I'd do the insane thing and I'd pick it up again. And so that first step is recognizing that insanity. I've got this problem. I can't control my drinking. I really want to stop drinking, but I keep on doing this crazy thing of picking up again and again. So the first step is just acknowledging that I've got that problem. So the first step is this one. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Now, the thing about that first step, there's no hope in the first step. That doesn't fix anything. All it is acknowledging I've got this really life-threatening problem that's causing misery and destruction in my life. So that's step one, just realizing how bad the problem is. Now, there's no hope in that step. The hope comes in step two, because in step two, it promises that I can be restored to sanity. If it's insane for me to keep on relapsing and relapsing, what I really need is to be restored to sanity. So the second step is actually about believing it's possible for me to recover. Now, by that point, I didn't really believe that because I'd tried so hard with all the powers I have, my willpower and knowledge and the fear of what was going to happen if I drink again. I'd used all these tools to try and stop drinking and they'd failed. So I'd actually started to believe that it wasn't possible for me to recover until I came into AA and I met people who had recovered from this deadly disease. So step two, where we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So if I'm powerless, step two is suggesting I need to find a power greater than myself. And the evidence of that is when I meet people who've recovered. In the book, the instructions for step two, how do we take step two? Put aside prejudice and look at the evidence. Put aside prejudice I might have against spiritual ideas. As I was mentioning before, I had lots of prejudice against prayer and spiritual ideas, but it suggests that I put those aside and look at the evidence, and the evidence is in AA that people are recovering. So then I come to step three, okay? So I know I'm powerless. I've started to believe that these people I'm meeting in AA have tapped into some power greater than themselves, because that's what they're telling me. And so maybe that can work for me. And so then there's a decision to try this out. Try out this new way of life, a spiritual path. So that's step three, is a decision to go on with this process. So step three made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And that's a pretty momentous sort of decision. Most people don't make that sort of decision. Most people, it says in the book, not just alcoholics, most people live life on a selfish, self-centered basis. But this is suggesting that I take a radical path and deliberately and consciously set out on a spiritual path. I don't know how to do that. That's why I need the rest of the steps to put me on that path. Now, the thing about step three is that there's an acknowledgement, and there's a formal acknowledgement of taking step three. I make the decision, and there's an effect of just making the decision. But then it suggests I actually say a prayer to acknowledge that. And so this is the third step prayer in the big book. So, the third step is acknowledged by this prayer.
We are now at step three. Many have said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thy wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we are ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him.
So I start this process with a prayer to whatever higher power I believe in. And we're going to look through the rest of the steps and take note of the prayers that are introduced as we go along. And notice the similarities and what it tells us about the prayer. And so as I started to go through the rest of these steps, particularly these next 6 steps, the house cleaning steps, there's prayers along the way. These are the house cleaning steps, these middle steps, where I have to get off my bum and actually do some work. The first one is this one. Step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the first thing it suggests when we do that is we make a list of our resentments and we look at what those other people did and how that affected us. And then in the book, it suggests we say a prayer for each of the people on my resentment list. And so there's a prayer associated with that. This is the prayer associated with the resentments.
We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity and patience that we would chiefly grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man, how can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry, thy will be done.
It's interesting, a lot of these prayers you hear, we're asking God to do something and then saying, what do you want me to do? We're asking God to remove the anger, but then how can I be helpful? The next list that we make in our inventory is a list of fears. And we look at our fears and what we did to set the ball rolling. And then we start thinking about how we could be different in the future. Again, there's a prayer associated with our fears list. This is it.
We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be.
Again, we're asking God to remove something, remove the fear, and then what do you want me to be and do instead? Then the next inventory is actually about our intimate relationships, our sex conduct, and there's a bunch of prayers associated with that.
We ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them.
Because having looked at our relationships, we've worked out what do we want to bring to repair our broken relationships or into new relationships as they form. But what do we do about if there's really big problems in our life?
In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter.
So now we're being introduced to praying for direction from this higher power. And there's one last prayer about step 4.
We earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing.
So in that prayer, we're asking for guidance and for strength. And you'll see that's a theme that goes right through all the prayers in the book. So that's step 4. And then step 5, I've got my inventory. I find someone that I trust and I take step 5 with them. So step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. That's where, for me, there was a really big shift. Up until this point in the program, I had this hope that this program might work for me. It was just this hope. But after taking step 5, that hope changed to a real belief that this program is actually working and bringing about a change in me. And I'll be able to continue to grow and change and stay sober as long as I go on with the rest of it. There's a prayer associated with step 5 at the end, having had that experience. This is the prayer from step 5.
We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better.
Okay. So that's steps 4 and 5, taking inventory and sharing it with someone else. Then we come to step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. In that inventory and when discussing it with someone else, I now understand some of the things about me, some of those defects of character, and it's about becoming willing to change. And so there is a prayer associated with that. If I'm not willing, this is what the prayer associated with step 6. This is out of the big book.
If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing.
And then step 7 is where we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. That realization in step 6, I'm willing to change, but step 7, realizing that I haven't been able to change myself, that I need help with that. And that step 7 is, in fact, the action that I take in step 7 is actually a prayer. So this is the step 7 prayer, straight out of the AA Big Book.
When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen.
I like this prayer because it really clarifies what the whole process of the 12 steps are about. It's about me becoming useful. That's how I stay sober long term, is being useful to other people, putting the welfare of other people ahead of my own, getting rid of the selfishness and self-centeredness, which is at the core. We're asking for these defects of character. Which ones? The ones that stand in the way of me being useful. That's what we're asking to be removed in step 7. So that's step 6 and 7, being ready to change and praying for help. And as you can see, here I was being really resistant to all this prayer, but as I go through the process, I'm just being introduced to these prayers and some really profound ideas in these prayers about looking for guidance, looking for strength, asking God for something, but also saying, what do you want me to do instead? And now I'm on the path and I'm trying to be more useful to other people, asking God to remove the things that are objectionable. It's pretty hard to be useful to other people if I'm just full of anger and fear and resentment and self-pity. This process starts to remove those things so I can be helpful to other people. Then we come to step 8, where we made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Here's another one. I wasn't too keen on making amends to people. But again, this is a step about becoming willing. And so there's a prayer associated with step 8.
If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes.
So we're asking our higher power to help us become willing to do this. And then step 9, where we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Now, I know from my experience, a lot of this step 9, going out and actually making amends, requires a lot of courage and some tact and just being really sensible in a lot of ways, but being really brave to actually go and make amends. There's a couple of prayers associated with step 9. This is the first one.
We ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be.
See what we're asking for there? Strength and direction. Strength and direction. Then there's another prayer associated with living amends. Those amends, say, to our family as we continue to stay sober and rebuild our family life and rebuild relationships. So this is the prayer relating to those long-term living amends.
So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love.
Again, we're asking for direction. So that's steps 8 and 9, looking for the harm we've done and then making amends. And then we come to step 10. Now, just want to recap all those house cleaning steps, okay? This is what the house looked like to start with. I come into AA, my thinking's all a mess, a whole lot of negative thinking, anger and resentment and fear and guilt and remorse and those things. I need to clean those up. So that process of the house cleaning steps 4 through to 9 starts to clean up my house because I want to get rid of the selfishness, the dishonesty, the resentment and the fear. Why do I want to be rid of them? Is because they stand in the way of me being useful to other people. And it's me being useful to other people is what keeps me sober long term. So that's my house, okay? I've taken that inventory, I've shared it with someone else, I've become willing to change, I've made amends where I can, and hopefully there's my skip. I'm getting rid of all the negative stuff, okay? And asking God to remove it. Off it goes. and I'm left with something I can now live with. You know? So here's my new house. We've cleaned it up enough to be able to be useful to other people. And because we've done a lot of house cleaning in those middle steps, but we're human. Some of the things can come back, not because we're alcoholic, but because we're human. But step 10 is about making sure that we now keep this house clean. So step 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This is the instruction.
Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code.
As you can see, this step 10 is a mixture and a combination of lots of those previous steps, those house cleaning steps. It says we should continue to watch for those 4 things that we've discovered, those 4 things that keep on coming up: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So as in step 4, we're taking that inventory, we're watching for them. Then it says when they crop up, we ask God to remove them at once. So that's like in step 7, we're asking God to remove that defective character. That we discuss them with someone immediately, so that's like in step 5, and then we make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone, so that's like in step 9. And then it says we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help, so that's actually pointing us forward to step 12. So you often hear about AA being a way of life, and so on a daily basis, this is how the program suggests that I conduct myself. I'm going to continue to do this. Here's my house. I've done a lot of work to clean up the majority of this stuff, but maybe a bit of selfishness starts creeping back in, or a bit of dishonesty, or maybe some resentment or some fear. And the instruction in step 10 is really clear. We're watching for those things. And when they crop up, it doesn't say if they crop up, they say when they crop up.
Yes.
So we're expecting them, because we're human. When they crop up, I don't need to go and get another big skip and do a big 4th step again and write it all down. I just need to deal with it on a daily basis. When they crop up, we ask God to remove it. We discuss it with someone else if that's necessary. We make amends quickly, and then we turn our attention to someone we can help. That's the process of step 10. And then the next day, they might come back again. And the process is the same. We ask God to remove it. We discuss with someone else if we can do that or we need to do that. We make amends quickly if we have hurt someone. And then the most powerful bit of this is that we turn our attention to someone we can help. This is the powerful bit, turning my attention away. Now, that's all very well to notice it and take it and ask God to remove it and talk about it, complain about it to someone else, okay? But doing that on its own doesn't change anything. I do those things, but then the last bit, the most powerful bit of step 10 is turning my attention to someone I can help. And the next day I might get a bit of resentment, come back in, same thing, ask God to remove it, talk about it with someone else, make amends if I've hurt someone. Over time, it seems as though we do that less and less. We do these things before we go and hurt someone. If we have hurt someone, we ask God to remove it, talk about it with someone else, and then turn our attention to someone we can help. Or perhaps fear comes back in, and that same process, ask God to remove it, talk about it with someone, make amends, and turn our attention to someone we can help. Now, the thing about fear and resentment, those two things are feelings, and so they're easy to watch for. I feel the fear. I feel the resentment. The other two are a bit more difficult to spot when dishonesty or selfishness comes into my life. They're not feelings, right? But I'm watching for them anyway. And I think that's how I start to value integrity, so that when I do something dishonest or I'm doing something selfish, I start to feel a pinch, okay? And I notice it. And the process is the same. I ask God to remove it. I talk about it with someone else if I need to do that. I make amends quickly, and then I turn my attention to someone I can help. Very powerful way of living.
And it becomes a way of life. It's a daily process. It's not something I'm really working hard at. It's something that just happens. I do feel those things. It's not as if I'm looking for every detail. I aspire to be a better human, and that's what step 10 does for me. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And I learn from those mistakes now, because step 10 allows me a process of what I need to do to correct it or to change. And without fear and without thinking that I'm a bad person, it's just about practicing and being allowed to make mistakes. That's the thing. This is not about being perfect. This is about being allowed to be able to make those mistakes and learn from them and grow. This is a real growth step. And it incorporates all those ones that I've already gone through. And it makes me a better human, but still human.
Yeah. And hopefully, if I'm doing that on a daily basis, I won't have to go back and do that whole process, the fourth step again, because I'm cleaning house on that daily basis. I think Chris's sponsor was a member that I met when I was first around, and she's always described that. The fourth step and that the house cleaning steps, when we go through those middle steps, it's like doing this huge house cleaning, getting rid of all the stuff. And then on a daily basis, I just need to empty the bin every day to keep the place clean.
He's just turned 40 years sobriety.
Yes. Yeah. We went to Bendigo to help her celebrate 40 years of sobriety a couple of weeks ago. It was
She still
awesome.
does it.
Yes.
This step 10.
It was awesome. It was awesome. So that's step 10, continuing that inventory on a daily basis. And by step 10, something amazing has happened. See, I came into AA desperate to stop drinking, and I'd failed and I'd failed and I'd failed. And I was getting lots of help. I was getting medical help that was keeping me alive. I was trying to get a lot of help, avoiding AA for a long time. But it seemed as though the best that was on offer, I might be able to find a way of coping with life without a drink. But I came to AA, and AA suggested in the second step that I could be restored to sanity. I get to the 10th step, and something amazing has actually happened. And these are known as the 10th step promises.
And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We'll seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. We'll see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We've not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition.
That's our experience as well. I get to this point and something really radical has changed. I rarely think about drinking, but even if it does come to mind, it's easily pushed aside. It says we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We feel safe and protected. The alcohol problem has been removed. That's the fulfillment of that promise of step 2. Sanity has been returned. And we can live this sober life as long as we keep on this spiritual path. So there's that continued inventory, and now we have this daily program, and we're introduced to step 11.
Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God-conscious. We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation.
Once again, it's talking about what's the prayer about, what's this program about, receiving strength and direction from something that has all knowledge and power. So step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. And there's instructions in the book about how we go about that. There's a number of pages there. We start on page 86 with an evening meditation.
When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid?
And there's a bunch of questions there on that page that we can ask ourselves. Notice there's those same 4 things that we've been watching for in step 10 during the day. Resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. So I can look at that and say, no, I've had a great day. None of those things popped up. So that's great. Or I might say, yes, I felt a bit of resentment there, but I noticed it at the time and I practiced my step 10 and I asked God to remove it and I made amends and I turned my attention to someone else. I can help. It did happen because I'm human. I've actually dealt with it at the time. Or I could say, oh yeah, that did happen, but I didn't fix that at the time, but that's okay. That's why I've got step 11. And I can note that and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go back and fix that up and make that apology to someone that I was rude to or something like that. So that step 10 during the day is backed up by that little meditation. It's a meditation where I just think about my day. So that's my evening meditation. As I said, there's instructions more about that on that page. And then in the morning, there's a morning meditation.
On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day.
So in the morning, it's a meditation and we're thinking about what's going to happen today and planning for the day. Again, there's some instructions about that, about how we prepare for the day. And then at the end of that process of thinking about our day, there's a closing prayer.
We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends.
So we've done a morning meditation. We conclude that with a prayer to be shown, given direction through the day.
If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers, which emphasize the principles we've been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer.
I like this because it's actually opening this up in terms, it's given some instructions on how to practice step 11, but then opens it up for us to explore according to our own beliefs, our own values, our own spiritual beliefs, and we can seek more. We can seek more. Gives us a lot of freedom in that sense. And then during the day,
as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action.
And so this is how I think lots of people love this prayer, the one we learn in AA, the Serenity Prayer. At any time during the day, if I'm agitated, I can stop and in that pause, say that Serenity Prayer, for example. So that's the instructions about step 11 from the Big Book. The thing about step 11 is, though, what are we seeking in step 11? Because I'd had that experience when I was much younger of meditation. When you talk about meditation, lots of us think about Eastern sort of meditation and have a particular idea about it. And I thought that meditation was about calming down and forgetting the world and dropping out and blissing out. And that's what it is. It's about becoming a hippie or stepping away from the world and ignoring it in a way. But when I come to step 11, that's not what it's about at all. What's the purpose of step 11? What are we seeking in step 11? Well, we're seeking knowledge and power. Knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. That's the purpose of step 11. We're seeking direction and strength, knowledge and power to live a courageous life and help other people. That's what it's all about. As I said, there's lots of different meditation practices, and over the years, before I got long time ago, and since I've been sober, I've explored all different ways, and there's lots of different ways of doing it. And some of us come into AA and think, oh, this meditation stuff is really hard, or we have some preconceived ideas. But just from my experience, this isn't out of the Big Book, this is from my experience. I just want to share some experience about some different types of meditation that you might want to look at. One is relaxation. You've probably experienced that maybe after a yoga class. You lie down and the instructor says, relax your toes and relax your feet and relax your thighs, and that body scan type thing, or a guided meditation where you're actually trying to relax and rest your body. So that type of meditation is about peacefulness, and it's really useful, particularly early days through the detox weeks and things like that. It can be really useful to do that sort of meditation. There's the focused mind, and lots of people try this. It's about concentrating on my breath or a candle or mindfulness. It's probably the most popular at the moment. It's become very popular. And that's about concentrating on a particular thing. Some people come in and they think, oh, meditation, step 11, I can't concentrate. My head's a mess, so I can't concentrate. Therefore, I can't meditate. Well, that's not right. I think this type can be quite hard early days, but if you really want to try this out, it can be a really great discipline. But that's one particular type of meditation. There's another type of meditation more to do with an empty mind, of a non-directive meditation, transcendental meditations like that, or Zazen. That's more about stopping my thinking altogether. That's really hard to do. You can't think to yourself, I'm going to stop thinking, because what am I thinking? I'm thinking about stopping thinking. So you really need to know a technique, use a technique to do that. But that empty mind is about being connected. That's another type. And again, some people come to meditation in AA and they think, oh, I can't empty my mind, so I'll never be able to meditate. But then there's another type of meditation. And you've got to remember, when the Big Book was written and those early members were around, they didn't know a lot about Eastern type meditation, Vipassana and Buddhist meditation, or Zazen, or those Eastern meditation. What they were talking about was this type of meditation, which is contemplation, reading inspirational literature, praying. Even within Eastern meditations, there are types of contemplation like koans in Buddhist meditation or sutras in some Eastern meditations. But contemplation is about thinking deeply. It's not about concentrating, and it's not about emptying my mind. It's about thinking about something deeply. And this is the type of meditation that those early members were talking about. That's why this book was created. Those early members, a lot of them used the Bible. In fact, Dr. Bob, one of the co-founders, he used a book of James as his inspiration. Other early members used a book called by Emmett Fox, The Sermon on the Mount. But those early members were looking for inspiration. They were taking religious texts and things and using that on a daily basis. As AA grew, a lot of AA members said, we want something just for AA. okay, that's not connected with any particular religion or anything. And that's how the book, The Daily Reflections, was created. It's some thoughts, some readings from AA literature and the thoughts of AA members that are put into a reading. Lots of people in AA now use that as their way of meditating. We read something inspirational and then we sit and we contemplate that. That's how we meditate. So that's what we're talking about when in the big book when they're talking about meditation. Those other types of meditation are fantastic and I use some of them. That's great. Okay, but when it comes to step 11, this is what it's talking about, contemplation of spiritual values. Sometime after the big book was written, sort of 12 years later, and there was a lot more experience, Bill and then wrote a second book with the 12 steps and 12 traditions. It was basically to introduce the traditions to the fellowship. So he wrote a series of essays about the steps. So the first 12 chapters are about the steps. And when it comes to step 11, he actually gives some really good advice, gives us a technique to use in step 11, the thing that he used. So this is what he says about, this is part of what it says in the 12 and 12, starting on page 98.
The actual experience of meditation and prayer across the centuries is, of course, immense. The world's libraries and places of worship are a treasure trove for all seekers. It is to be hoped that every AA who has a religious connection which emphasises meditation will return to the practice of that devotion as never before. But what about the rest of us who, less fortunate, don't even know how to begin?
So once again, he's suggesting that if we have, depending on our spiritual beliefs, so we should follow those, okay? And this journey in step 11, we can follow our own conscience. But then he's saying, well, if you don't have that sort of experience, he's going to give us a suggestion. And these next couple of pages describe a method of meditation, one that he used and wrote about actually later on as well, this particular method he used. And we're going to use this as a basis of it. We're going to read through the next couple of pages, and then at the end of that, I hope you'll join us and we can actually use this as a guided meditation, the instructions that Bill gives us out of the 12 and 12. So this is what he says.
We might start like this. First, let's look at a really good prayer. We won't have far to seek. The great men and women of all religions have left us a wonderful supply. Here, let us consider one that is a classic. Its author was a man who for several hundred years now has been rated as a saint. We won't be biased or scared off by that fact, because although he was not an alcoholic, he did, like us, go through the emotional ringer. And as he came out the other side of that painful experience, this prayer was his expression of what he could then see, feel and wish to become.
So this is known as the prayer of St. Francis. He doesn't mention St. Francis in the book, but it's a very well-known prayer. And Bill really grabbed hold of this and used that as his own inspiration for spiritual growth. So the prayer is listed in the book. We're not going to read it right now. We'll actually, as we go through the exercise, you'll hear it read out a couple of times, a few times actually. Then he gives us instructions about how to use this beautiful prayer.
As beginners in meditation, we might now reread this prayer several times very slowly, savouring every word and trying to take in the deep meaning of each phrase and idea.
So his suggestion is, okay, we're going to take this prayer and we're going to reread it to ourselves a couple of times, okay? So in this exercise we're going to do together, Chris's voice will read it through twice. Then it gives us further instruction.
As though lying upon a sunlit beach, let us relax and breathe deeply of the spiritual atmosphere with which the grace of this prayer surrounds us. Let us become willing to partake and be strengthened and lifted up by the sheer spiritual power, beauty and love of which these magnificent words are the carriers. Let us look now upon the sea and ponder what its mystery is, and let us lift our eyes to the far horizon, beyond which we shall seek all those wonders still unseen.
So we've read through the prayer a couple of times, and then it suggests that we just relax, okay? We can close our eyes and relax and breathe in and soak up the spiritual nature of this prayer that we're saying. And this is when we're actually starting to meditate. The first two readings of the prayer are more to do with, more like a mantra, getting us into the right mood and feel. Okay, and now we're going to sit and relax and just not think, or if we can, and just breathe deeply and we've now started to meditate. It goes on.
Shucks, says somebody. I think I would have said something else. This is nonsense. It isn't practical. When such thoughts break in, we might recall a little ruefully how much store we used to set by imagination as it tried to create reality out of bottles. Yes, we revelled in that sort of thinking, didn't we? And though sober nowadays, don't we often try to do much the same thing? Perhaps our trouble was not that we used our imagination, perhaps the real trouble was our almost total inability to point imagination toward the right objectives. There's nothing the matter with constructive imagination. All sound achievement rests upon it. After all, no man can build a house until he first envisage a plan for it. Well, meditation is like that too. It helps to envision our spiritual objective before we try to move toward it. So let's get back to that sunlit beach, or to the plains, or to the mountains if you prefer.
I like it. That's the experience. Lots of us have this experience. We sit to meditate and we're going to be calm and get all relaxed and all that. And then this negative thing comes in. Okay. And that's natural. That's what happens. That's how our brain works. It's designed to think things. This is the instruction as part of this meditation, and lots of meditations are like this. When something negative comes in, we're just going to put that aside. Okay, just acknowledge that it happened, put that aside, and put our attention back onto what we're trying to do. We're trying to use constructive imagination to envision what life can be as I continue on this spiritual path. So that's what it's about. Okay, sure, that happens, that shucks thing, that negative thing, or I might think about something that happened some time ago, or what am I going to do tomorrow, or whatever. But when those happen, that's natural. Part of any meditation technique will tell you that. But then the technique is then we put that aside and put our attention back on the positive. Then it goes on. So we're going to put aside those negative, that whatever comes up, the negative stuff, and then it goes on.
When by such simple devices we've placed ourselves in a mood in which we can focus undisturbed on constructive imagination, we might proceed like this. Once more we read our prayer and again try to see what its inner essence is.
Okay, so we've read through the prayer a couple of times. We've sat back and relaxed into that, got into that relaxed mode, just setting aside any negative thinking. And now we're going to reread the prayer again, a third time. But this time we're going to take a different attitude to the prayer. So I'm going to read through again. This is what it says to do.
We'll think now about the man who first uttered the prayer. First of all, he wanted to become a channel. Then he asked for the grace to bring love, forgiveness, harmony, truth, faith, hope, light, and joy to every human being he could. Next came the expression of an aspiration and a hope for himself. He hoped, God willing, that he might be able to find some of these treasures too. This he would try to do by what he called self-forgetting. What did he mean by self-forgetting, and how did he propose to accomplish that? He thought it better to give comfort than to receive it, better to understand than to be understood, better to forgive than to be forgiven.
So after reading it that third time, we're then going to just sit in silence and contemplate the values that have been expressed in that prayer. Okay, so this is our little exercise. Okay, I hope you'll join us. It'll take a little while. Okay, I hope you can join this together. We'll start with closing our eyes and just listen. You'll hear Chris's voice guiding through this process, and we can do that together. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. Go and make a cup of tea or something, but we'll come back in a little while. But I'll just turn our mic off and just listen to this, and I hope you'll join us to do that. We're ready to begin?
Close your eyes. This is a meditation about what we wish to become. Drop resistance. Savour every word and meaning of this prayer as we read through twice. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred I may bring love, that where there is wrong I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord I may bring harmony, that where there is error I may bring truth, that where there is doubt I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred I may bring love, that where there is wrong I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord I may bring harmony, that where there is error I may bring truth, that where there is doubt I may bring faith, that where there is despair I may bring hope, that where there are shadows I may bring light, that where there is sadness I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Rest quietly with these thoughts. Relax and breathe deeply. Take in the spiritual atmosphere and grace of the prayer. When other thoughts break in, remember that sound achievement rests in constructive imagination. Become willing. Listen to the prayer once more. At the end, continue with eyes closed. Use constructive imagination to think about bringing love, forgiveness, harmony, truth, faith, hope, light, and joy to others. Focus undisturbed for 2 minutes of silent contemplation. I will advise you when the time is done. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred I may bring love, that where there is wrong I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord I may bring harmony, that where there is error I may bring truth, that where there is doubt I may bring faith, that where there is despair I may bring hope, that where there are shadows I may bring light, that where there is sadness I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. Slowly open your eyes.
Mm.
Oh, you're still there.
That's nice. I like that. Enjoyed that. And Phil goes on what he says about that meditation.
This much could be a fragment of what is called meditation, perhaps our very first attempt at a mood, a flyer into the realm of spirit, if you like. It ought to be followed by a good look at where we stand now and a further look at what might happen in our lives were we able to move closer to the ideal we have been trying to glimpse. Meditation is something which can always be further developed. It has no boundaries, either of width or height. Aided by such instruction and example as we can find, it is essentially an individual adventure, something which each one of us works out in his own way. But its object is always the same, to improve our conscious contact with God, with His grace, wisdom, and love. And let's always remember that meditation is in reality intensely practical. One of its first fruits is emotional balance. With it, we can broaden and deepen the channel between ourselves and God as we understand Him.
Okay. So that's our step 11. I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, we'll come back and talk about step 12. That will be the last in the series. And there's one more prayer in the book, and it's actually associated with step 12. So step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. The book says that step 12 is actually the most powerful step of all for long-term sobriety. It works when all else fails. So the prayer about step 12 is actually at the very end, in the last chapter 11, a vision for you. And so if step 12 is the most powerful step, then this must be the most powerful prayer.
Ask Him in your morning meditations what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answer will come if your own house is in order.
I was promised this spiritual awakening in this step. What was awakened in me was compassion for the next person. That's why we love carrying this information. This information was given to us when we were first around, and we want to carry it to the next person. So thanks for letting us share.
Thanks, David.